guys, again, sorry for the mic. This is part 2 of our conversation because we kind of had a bit more to say, I guess. Yeah.
The fun topic.
I like fun.
It's not really fun, but I was like at the beginning of the podcast, I was like, oh, this is gonna be very lighthearted, and but everything I talk about is not so lighthearted, so I don't know where
we're hitting it hard, like.
Well, to me, this is like very fun.
Okay.
So I guess that's what I mean by fun. But like, is it really that lighthearted? Probably not. It's like, is it heavy? Probably. Anyway, so I wanted to talk to you about because I followed this girl, and she's actually 16, and I'm like, wow, she's so accomplished at 16, and I'm like almost 16, and it's like, oh, the embarrassment, the shame. But I think she's Catholic actually. Anyway, so she put this thing on her story where she said, stop supporting satanic media, and it can just change that fast. Where this girl will be singing about like how she has a bellyache from it's Billie Eilish, right? So the person is talking about Billie Eilish. And this girl can start seeing how she has a bellyache from how her heart hurts from a guy or whatever. And the next second, she can talk about how God wants the devil on her team, on her team.
Interesting.
So yeah, thoughts? There's more too. The Billie Eilish is just the first example I have.
Yeah. I would say it's very important to discern, to think critically about what you are listening to and consuming.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are songs out there. I remember once, just a couple weeks ago, I was on Spotify and I was going down the like 90s angsty rock rabbit hole, because that's what I'm an old lady. So
the reminiscence.
Yeah, so I was just reliving some like of the heavier, like, yeah. And then there was one song that I was like, oh yeah, there's this song. And it was literally, I listened to it, and I mean, the beat's good, the melody's good or whatever.
Like, and
then I was listening to the music or to the words, and I was like, I don't want that in my life.
Yeah.
And so I took it off my playlist, like I was just like, nope, I don't need to deal with that, and it wasn't even like, I mean, it wasn't like I'm the Antichrist. It was
yeah,
just about like.
But there's a song that literally the chorus is "I am the Antichrist."
Yeah, so it's just important to be like, is this going to bring me closer to God as a Christian? That's the question that I ask. I don't listen to exclusively Christian music.
Whoa, bad.
I know.
Horrible, Cheryl.
Fired.
How dare you?
No, I listen to secular music. I listen to, mainstream stuff, but I really try to make a point of listening, not in the sense of like, this is the best thing I've ever heard, but like, what is this person actually saying?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I feel about it? And how does God feel about it? And if we believe that God's always with us, like, is it like, it's like, he's got to listen to what we listen to, And
you just pictured God cringing next to you. Like,
yeah, like, oh, this is the worst. Like,
you think God has taste in music? He's like, ew, trap. Oh.
Well, I don't know if he has like a genre that he likes, but I think that he listens to the heart behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's important to really like make the decision to listen to something or not listen to something based on if it brings us closer to God, if it edifies,
and its impact on
yeah. I mean, if someone says God wants the devil on my side, like that's one line out of an entire song, right? So like I'd have to see the whole.
The title of the song is "All the Good Girls Go to Hell."
Okay, so.
Do you want to read out some of the lyrics?
No, but I've heard stuff about Billie Eilish, and I don't know that I like know her. I've heard her stuff, but like I haven't like gotten into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, because most of her music, it's all like bellyache is like about how she has a bellyache from how this guy doesn't like her or whatever. And then, All the Good Girls Go to Hell is just very random, because in the stream of music that she makes, obviously a lot of it is kind of dark, but it's mostly about like how she struggled with depression and stuff.
Yeah.
And then randomly in the album, you're like, all the good girls go to hell.
Okay, well, yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to like go through the lyrics and help and walk through analyzing. We can maybe do that another time. But yeah, I would just say like, I don't like the characteristic of like, this is satanic, but like, cause she said the word hell, like that's not true. But it could be. So it's just a matter of like, knowing what I know, like Billie Eilish is like super popular in like the Gen
She's
Z.
huge.
Yeah, she's huge, and she's giving voice to a lot of things that people weren't saying before, which is not necessarily a bad thing. She might be saying it in a poor way, maybe not, I don't know. But I think the important thing is like, what is she saying, and how do we address it as Christians? You know, like in our own worlds. In myself, if I'm struggling with the same things, how do I address that in myself? If I see my friends struggling with that stuff, how do I address that in them? How do I be a light for Jesus in their lives? How do I love them the way Jesus loved me? How do I walk with them? Because that's what we're called to do. And bring hope into a world where, you know, if there's like so much darkness and so much depression, like how do we bring hope into that?
Well, on that whole continuation, I watched, I know, so bad, secular media, womp womp, but I watched Lucifer, right? And it's this TV show where it's like basically the main character is the devil, but he's taking a vacation, quote unquote, from hell, and his dad, quote unquote, dad God is mad at him because like they need somebody to watch hell. Like he's basically just letting hell loose, basically. In hell though, if that makes any sense. And I wanted to know what your thoughts were. Is it I know that everything is like nuanced, it's not just bad good in most things, but thoughts?
Yeah. I don't never having seen the show, it's hard to say. I think like there's a lot of shows that I've seen recently that like there's just a lot of like satanic stuff in it. Not like satanic in the sense of like Satan worship or but just like refers to like there's like really dark stuff in it. Like, you know, the whole like Riverdale show, Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Oh, Constantine in the CW. It's a show about a guy who's like master of the dark arts, and he'll like what is it called when you're doing an exorcism? He does a lot of exorcisms on the show. Okay. That type of thing.
Yeah. And then I mean there's like so some of it is more harmful than others. And this is where the discernment piece comes in, really critically thinking about what we're watching, because there's Harry Potter, and you know, like I'm not saying like you're into Harry Potter, but you know, like Harry Potter is an example where people were polarized especially in the Christian world,
not sure
about like, is Harry Potter satanic or is it okay? And I mean, I read all those books and watched the movies, and I think that's just like that's like a fiction.
It's fantasy.
It's fantasy, and I'm just you know, it's not like glorifying it, you know, like it's not like
it's just a different world.
Yeah. But then there's things like where it feels more like they're trying to influence us towards the darkness, and that's where I struggle. And so like I don't actually like I watched a few seasons of Riverdale because the high school is like a high school that was right across the street from my church when I lived in Vancouver, so I got off the bus in front of that high school every day. So I was like, oh, it's Vancouver.
It's there.
Yeah. I'm famous. But not really. So I watched it, but you know, there's just some like weirdness in it that I was just like, it unsettled me, and I don't watch it anymore. And it's kind of cheesy.
Well, anyway, I never watched it because I'm not like the other girls, guys. Well, it started off that way, but then I was like, I mean, it's not that interesting to me.
Yeah, it got really weird. Like, it got really weird.
Well,
and like, I grew up reading.
So random. It's like this thing, and then it's like, no, actually, this person is not dead, and they were actually the cousin of this person. Like, how do they come to these
so dumb. And at one point, like, the girl's got her brother's corpse in her house, and like, it's just like,
and then the inspector's actually my long lost brother, who's actually who's going to investigate my mother. And it's like,
and the weird thing is that like I read Archie comics growing up, and Riverdale is nothing like
very different.
Like, it's so different. Anyway, I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit trail, but all that to say, like, if I feel like a show is trying to push me or push the agenda of like, get into this because it's cool, I withdraw a little bit, especially towards the darkness. But you can say that for any agenda that a show is pushing, you know, whether it's like a political agenda or a sexual agenda, like sexual identity, or you know, anything that feels just like this is not part of the original story, you know, like obviously when you're dealing with like witchcraft and stuff, that's, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Because it's real. They're, you know, like these are like fake stories, but witchcraft is real. And so there is like a really dangerous component to it if you get too far into it.
Well, what I was thinking to say, well, what I wanted to tell you is like, I tell you how to feel. I'm telling you exactly how I feel. It's that, well, for Lucifer specifically, literally the point of the show is for you to feel sorry for the devil, basically, which I think that it sounds very bad, but like, for me, I think it wasn't that I cognizantly realized it. I was just like, oh yeah, but this is not real. So, I think I see the character Lucifer Morningstar in the show more as like just a person versus like an actual, like the actual devil. Even though they keep pushing like he is the actual devil, it's just like, for me, it's definitely two whole different views. Like that view of the devil is not real, and I just find the show very entertaining. And oh my gosh, the love story is so dramatic. It's like the best thing ever. But see, he's so humanized in a way that he's not even. He's like a person. He's not the devil, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, humanizing the devil could be. I'm not saying it is. It could be the motive of that show, the agenda.
Well, that is what they're trying to do.
You know, and what we know about the devil is that he's the father of lies. That he is not out for our good, but he's going to make it look like he is, and he's not like the guy in like the red suit and the, you know, spiky tail and the horns and the pitchfork. He's actually like, he comes among us. He looks beautiful, and he makes things look beautiful that we shouldn't do. And he's literally out. He doesn't care if we, you know, worship him, but he just wants to distract us and pull us away from worshiping God, which is the reason why we were created. And so we want to make sure that we are not going down that road at all, right? Like the devil is not a joke. And not that I'm saying this show is like the gateway to whatever, but like
to Satan worship.
But it can play a part in your life of like, hey, I don't think he's that bad, and that's exactly what he wants us to think. Yeah, that he's not that bad, that he's actually out for our good, and that God is not, and that's what he makes us call into question. That's part of my Good Friday sermon.
Well, my question is like, if I'm able to dissociate the two ideas, where like this is a show that's not that. Like obviously isn't coming from a Christian perspective, and it's not like they're trying to make you think that it's, or the idea is like, oh, the devil isn't that bad. But if I think that this, like if I dissociate the two ideas that I have, and I know very clearly still who the devil is, right? Is it wrong of me to kind of enjoy the show?
I don't think so. I think I would say the litmus test is kind of like how much you're in the Bible or you're bringing truth into your life alongside of that, because you can easily get sucked into something if you're not balancing it with you know, having truth in your life, having regular Bible reading, you know, connecting with other Christians. This kind of conversation is really great. And so yeah, like if like I would say it's not like the worst thing ever, but you just have to proceed with caution, but also make sure that the truth is something that is more influential in your life than that random fiction show that could or could not be real dangerous for you.
I titled this just nuance. That's it. That's the whole title. Well, actually, you know how you said like Satan doesn't want to necessarily make you worship him. He just wants to stop you from worshiping God. Yeah. That it just made me think of this series that I read, written by a Christian, but like once you realize, because I didn't know that it was written by a Christian at first, but when I finished the first book, I researched the author because I'm like a creep. I always research all the authors, all the books that they've released, and I know I'm so normal. Like who even does that? But,
I do that.
I also do that in TV shows. Though.
If I enjoy a book, I want to know what else they've written.
I'll search up the cast. Like I'll just like look at all the movies they've been in. Anyway, not related, but it's a series called Everlife, and the first one is called First Life, I think. And basically, it's this world in which hypothetically the afterlife is definitely real. So there's two companies, not companies, kind of world type of thing, where they are trying their whole life, your whole life, first life. They convince you to sign to them for the afterlife. And basically, the main character is this girl who hasn't signed. And her mom and her dad want her really badly to sign to this well, the two sides. Okay, there's one where it's okay. I'm gonna spoil it, but it's basically hell, right?
Yeah.
The representation of hell by this author, and it's basically like, well, we can promise you a bunch of money, celebrity status, we can give you all the people in the world, all the fun stuff in this life, but they never talk about what happens in the afterlife, right? And the other one was, well, we can't offer you the money that the other company or whatever you want to call it has, but we can offer you our family, and you'll always be welcome here or whatever. And most of the time people are like, oh, you're so stupid, why didn't you take the money, right? And your parents want you to take the money, so like, because she's getting tortured every single day in this asylum type place where all the people who are not signed get sent, kind of. Well, they're not forced to go, but their parents, like, since she's a child still, she gets forced to go. And so basically they're like beating her up, they're starving her every single day until they're like, well, sign. But the guy that's like torturing her actually hasn't signed, like he has no affiliation, which is, I thought was really interesting. And throughout the books she dies twice. I think like she dies twice because the first time she gets taken back, like the shocker or whatever that's called.
Clear.
So yeah, and then they find out that because they're like, oh, well, when you die you're gonna go to Many Ends, which is the place where it's a rumor that there's a place where if you don't sign you go to, and it's called Many Ends, right? And they're like, and it turns out that like her aunt, who was told that she was crazy or whatever, was actually trying to tell her something without like being conspicuous, because they're always watching whoever they are, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was like so interesting. And then obviously there's a bunch of like parallels you could like link to whatever.
Keep talking, I'm just looking it up.
Oh yeah, it's called Everlife, the series, and the first book is First Life because it's her first life. Pretty self-explanatory.
Got it.
But obviously there's like romance or whatever. But I thought that was really interesting how so turning away from worship, right? Because she finds out the second time that she dies, because she hasn't signed yet. Oh, she dies 3 times. Hold on now. She dies 3 times? Yeah, she dies 3 times because the third time is she dies for real. The second time she dies, she goes to Many Ends again. The first time she dies, she went to Many Ends, but like she wasn't able to make it there. They just revived her as soon as possible. And so the second time, she finds out that there's this big tree that's like, you just ask for whatever and it just gives it to you, right? And obviously that's like, it's not the God character, because God is also a character in the series, but it's kind of in this horrible place where you die every day. Because basically Many Ends is a place where every single 24 hours or however long a day is, you die again and again and again. And that's what it is every day. Which you would think that's hell, right? But hell in this world is not what you would think hell is. It's like, anyway, I'm getting off track. So then she finds out that Many Ends is actually connected to hell. And, that nobody knew that, but basically the person, the devil character, right? The devil character had decided, that this, I think it represents the Garden of Eden, but like, except it's like God, Jesus, and the devil that used to walk there. Obviously, it's not totally biblically correct, right? But it kind of represents the Garden of Eden, where there was this huge tree that used to be there, and God, it's not God, but you get the point. I'm just saying it.
The God figure.
Yeah, so God, Jesus, and the devil used to hang out there or whatever. They vibed there. And God had made this big tree, that he loved and whatever. He really cared about this tree. And basically there was rupture, like the devil became the devil, right? And he got super mad and jealous of Jesus, or whoever was Jesus, and basically, the family or whatever ruptured. And so now he had taken over the garden with that good tree and like made it Many Ends. And turns out, basically not signing is the same as signing to hell. And that was basically the conclusion. And I thought that was like, wow. I mean, I think I read this like a couple of years ago, so I hadn't ever thought about it. But yes, not signing or not becoming a Christian is the same as becoming like a Satan worshiper.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it Satan worshiper, but I think there's very clear categories of you believe in Jesus or you don't believe in Jesus. And I mean, there is a subcategory within the not believing in Jesus of people who actually worship the devil. But Yeah.
In the end, it doesn't make the hugest difference.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you wanted to say something else.
I'm thinking through it. I mean, it's pretty nuanced and it's hard to go into in like a podcast and be like, and satisfactory answer. But yeah, it's basically, you know, the Bible talks about two roads. There's like the wide one and the narrow one. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting a phone call. Ooh. Nope, that's you.
That's me. Hold on.
Pause.
So this next topic is basically like, I know we can't really get too much into it, but the New Age / cults / what do you feel about the way that like the world is now engulfing everything into being Christian? Like, of course, I said this a couple of weeks ago. I'm no one to be gatekeeping Christianity. Like, who am I to say like you're not a Christian? Because if you think that you are, but then again, if you think you are, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are. But then again, like, should I be saying that? Like, I don't really think that you're being a Christian or whatever. And like nowadays, I think that Mormons call themselves Christians, and it's like, where do you think we should draw the line / if there is a line?
I would say, again, it's more nuanced than we probably have time to go into mm-hmm. today, but I think there's like the best lies have a bit of truth in them, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you work at a bank and you are learning how to recognize counterfeit bills, they don't have you study counterfeits. They have you study the real thing in order to be able to recognize when the fakes come through, because you know the real thing so well that the fakes are obvious. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how we need to approach that stuff. So there is a lot of like spirituality in the world mm-hmm. outside of Mormonism. That is like, I'm a spiritual person, and that's totally
that's the trend right now.
Yeah. It's not Christianity. Mm-hmm. It can be, but it sometimes isn't. So again, they say like some things that line up, but when you start digging down into what they believe, the gospel, what we call the good news about Jesus, it's pretty offensive. And so, well, to everyone, it can be offensive. And so like the more you dig down with someone, and like if they get offended by the gospel, mm-hmm. then you know, like you can usually like gauge where they're at in their mm-hmm. spirituality. So is it spirituality in the sense that like Christians are spiritual people, mm-hmm. but is it spirituality in the sense that, you know, we are trusting in Jesus for our salvation, and we are walking as a disciple of God, learning to be like Jesus more and more every day? Mm-hmm. Or is it like, I meditate and I'm sending you good thoughts, you know, like it's just like this wishy-washy like
type of thing.
Yeah. And the Mormons, there are very specific things. Once you start researching, there are very specific things that are in direct contradiction of Christianity. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the fact that they follow a different book than the Bible. Yeah. For one, there's lots though. They don't believe that Jesus was who he said he was. You know, like
are they the ones that believe that he's an angel, or?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So basically,
that he's brother. He and Satan are brothers.
Yeah. The Mormons think that Jesus was sent by God and quote unquote the Son of God because he was made by God. So they think that he is an angel, basically.
Yeah.
And, so the question is, I found this was very fishy by a person that I wouldn't really consider a Christian, but they call themselves a Christian. And so they said, it's online, by the way. It's not like a person in my real life. I'm just calling someone out so directly.
Joe was.
Yeah, so this guy said, and he says that he's a Christian, right? And he said, oh, well, I think that all religions are right. And I was like, hold on. If 2 + 2 is 4 and 5 + 5 is 10, how did you get to this conclusion?
I did not sign up to talk about math, Hannah.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I just bring into like a bunch of formulas.
Math and I are not
Solve
friends.
The area quickly now.
So you want to know what I think about all religions being the same?
They're all right.
They're not. Because I don't know if I can answer this right now.
Yeah. It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah.
But would you say that you would still consider them a Christian? Like, I'm not saying to excommunicate them or whatever, but
no. Well, I think like the main idea that I'm thinking about is that a lot of the other religions say that you have to measure up to a certain amount, and then you achieve the status that you're trying to achieve. Nirvana or becoming a Buddhist or what.
Oh, in Mormons, Buddha. It's like you get you become a god. That's like the goal.
Yeah. In Christianity, the thing that differentiates Christianity from the rest of the religions that are out there is that in those other religions, like we said, you have to achieve a certain amount of like status and, fix yourself.
Before you could do it.
Yeah, before you measure up. In Christianity, like there's no chance that you can measure up, but God came down to our level and made it possible for us to measure up. So he did it for us. He didn't expect us to do it. He did it for us. Does that make sense?
Me thinking of the Sunday school song, like, he came from heaven's earth to save
don't stop singing because you'll get
another copyright strike.
They're gonna cancel your account.
Hold it. My account is gone. Just deleted.
So that's the main difference, and that's the thing that I love, that like in other religions, like in order for the deity to pay attention to you, you have to be
good enough.
Yeah, good enough. Pretty
but then
enough.
There's the problem
enough.
with like the leaders in whatever like a religion or a faith cult thing that you're in. Then the leaders kind of judge if you're good enough, which how would they know?
Yeah.
How would they know?
Yeah.
So then, what do you think of Catholics then? Because they kind of have that, like, obviously not individual Catholics, just the Catholic Church in its presentation of things is kind of legalistic in the way that you have to be enough. You have to do your rosary or whatever. You have to, I mean, I don't really know that much about Catholics, but I know that you have to do your rosary every night or something.
Yeah, I would say that there can be a tendency in the Catholic faith to have kind of like you have to do these things in order to be good. I would say I've met Catholics who are without a doubt Christians. Better Christians than I am.
Because they're dedicated. Like, we respect the dedication.
Yeah. And so it's hard for me to sit here and be like, well, I'm going to pronounce this thing about Catholics. Because it's very much a case-by-case basis. I think the general, like, if you do the rosary and you do this and you do this, and then you'll be saved, I don't believe in that. But there is something about those rituals that help people bring people closer to God. And so some people use those in a different way than the popular, like, rituals.
I also have a question about, like, baby baptism. Thoughts? Because I remember in the past, I've been very judgmental of, like, people I know that would consider themselves Christian just because they were baptized at birth. And I mean, it's not their fault that they believe it to be this way, but it's just that, like, I don't know. Just because you were baptized doesn't mean that you're a Christian, and just because you weren't baptized doesn't mean you're not a Christian, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, there's different traditions around infant baptism. There are some traditions that believe that it is something that makes you a Christian. And I would say I disagree with that. There's another tradition that would say it's like welcoming you into God's family. So it's more of like a dedication type thing. Like we would do a dedication here. Dedications are not in the Bible, but we do them.
Wait, dedication as in, that's a name,
like baby dedication. That's a pretty common Protestant.
I didn't know.
If a church practices adult baptism, there's usually a baby dedication where the parents stand before the church.
I wasn't born here, so.
The parents stand before the church and they vow before God and their church family to do their best to raise this child up in God. And then also the church dedicates to helping this family
raise the baby.
Yeah. And so that's not in the Bible, but it's a practice that we do. So again, like when we talk about these things, there are some issues within Christianity, within the church, that we call open-handed issues, where it's like you can believe one thing or you can believe another thing, but whichever side of the coin you fall on or whatever, or the fence, I guess, I don't know what the metaphor is I'm looking for, you're still not sinning. You're still not jeopardizing your salvation. But there are some things which we would call closed-handed
things that are no-nos.
Which it would be like, is Jesus the Son of God? If you don't believe Jesus is the Son of God, there is a giant
Are you a Christian?
yes. That
It's
is
like,
what we call a salvific issue, or like something that has to do with your salvation. If you
It's
don't
like
believe
very
Jesus
important.
raised from the dead, that's a big issue. And I will not fight you, but like I will address that in your life. But if you believe, there's another example is women preaching or not being able to preach.
That's more complicated.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated thing, but I grew up in a tradition where women were not allowed to preach. And now I'm here at Westview and I preach.
I grew up here, so I don't know.
and I have really good pastor friends who don't believe women can preach, but we're still great friends. And we know that what they believe about that and what I believe about that is just two sides of a coin.
You can live in harmony still.
Yeah.
Because
we can, yeah, and we absolutely do. So yeah, it's something that doesn't affect my salvation if I preach or not.
I never even thought about, like, until I started researching more on just like Christian topic debate things, and I was like, oh, well, because I basically always came to this church except when I was like a baby, but I don't remember when I was a baby until like I don't ever remember asking myself if it was right or wrong if there was like a woman preaching, because I never, like, it just never occurred to me. And then I went to youth group and I had a youth pastor who was a girl, and I was like, it just is. Like,
that's me.
Yeah, that's her, guys. Because I guess I didn't think about it. It just never came across as like an issue or a question. So
yeah,
I just didn't think about it. Although I haven't really done that much research on it. I just learned that that was a thing that was debated among Christians.
Yeah.
Oh,
but if it's not a salvation issue, it's not an important debate. Like
you can still ask the question, but it might not. It's not a make or break.
It's not, as the saying goes, it's not a hill you want to die on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So something interesting I wanted to talk about was. Oh, we already talked about that. Never mind. Just girly things.
Yay, we're so ahead of the game.
Hold on. I'm gonna actually pause. This is gonna be great.
I'm scared.
Okay. So the next topic is also related to Catholic Church. Like, I'm not. Definitely, if you're a Catholic, I respect you, and I mean, I'm not unvalidating,
devaluing,
unvalidating, disvalidating, whatever. I'm not validating you, and basically, it's just that I've realized that in Quebec, a lot of the time when people are talking about Christians, they usually say Catholics, even though it's it might be more of a minority than we think. It's just that Quebec is like French, and it used to be always Catholic until the English invaded or whatever, and then there was like much more Protestantism, and so I always had this issue in my mind. I was like, why are they always saying Catholic? Like, I used to have a huge issue with people saying like Catholic instead of Christian, because I was like, well, I'm not a Catholic and I'm still a Christian, and it's like, whatever. It literally doesn't really matter that much, but yeah, so a few other issues I want to talk about with you is the Catholic Church's new list of the deadly sins.
Mortal sins?
Yeah, it's called the societal sins. And do you want to read out the new ones?
Yeah, so number 1 is genetic modification. Number 2 is carrying out experiments on humans. Shoot, there goes our youth group activity for this week. Just kidding.
We're just GMOing people. That's what they think the Protestants do. They're like, oh no, those bad Protestants.
Number 3 is polluting the environment.
Mm-hmm.
4 is causing social injustice. 5 is causing poverty. 6 is becoming obscenely wealthy. And 7 is taking drugs.
Okay. So, do you want to say anything before I ask you a question?
No, just ask me.
Just oof.
Yeah. Just like, oof.
Well,
indeed.
I wanted to say, like, my opinion generally is some of these things are, yeah, you could say is morally wrong, but the fact that they've made it into a list and added, like, it kind of feels a bit Jehovah's Witnessy, if you want to ask me, because they change the Bible every year, their Bible or whatever they want to call it, and it's like the way that they released it was like an official list of the new 7 societal sins, and they don't quite explain it that heavily, I feel like.
Yeah.
And it feels a bit it's not wrong. Like maybe some of these things are wrong to do, but they don't really explain what it means and why it's wrong. They kind of just say this is bad and you should just believe it. And so that's my issue with it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my thoughts are that, yeah, I believe that God created us in his image. And so like the genetic modification and carrying out experiments on humans is clearly.
But they don't say that. They don't say like, it's because God created us in our image that we think that it's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, polluting the environment, it goes back to what we were talking about before about, I don't know if that's going to be on this episode, but I said at another time that we were mandated by God to take care of the planet, to take care of this world. And so we're not doing that. And so polluting the environment, I agree with. I mean, a lot of these are biblical. Taking drugs is
not biblical, but it is a vice.
Yeah. Like, like the Bible says not to get drunk, which is obviously alcohol, but
they didn't have drugs. Oh, they do have.
I think they had opium and stuff, but
maybe they didn't call it like
I think it's like the losing control thing. And I'm not saying like just don't take drugs until you lose control. That's not what I'm saying. I don't think drugs are good for you, and I think it comes down to caring for the temple of God, which the Bible says is our bodies, the temple of the Holy Spirit. And so a lot of these, I see them as just loving your neighbor as yourself, because God says the two biggest commandments, most important commandments in the Bible are love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So if we're causing poverty, if we're becoming obscenely wealthy at the expense of others, especially, there's like a major, what's the word? The distribution of wealth in our world is messed up. That like, we live in our society and we're like, I'm so poor. But like literally, if you have a car, you're in the top 5% of the wealthiest people in the world. And there are people out there who are surviving on $1 a day. And so like, or less. And so it's like very relative. And so like becoming obscenely wealthy, like, first of all, it usually means that you're taking money that other people could have. And I'm not a communist. I'm not like everyone should have equal share, like, I'm not saying that.
Karl Marx for the win.
Yeah. Because I think it looks better on paper than it works in real life. So, but I am saying that like we should be caring for our brothers and sisters who are poor. Yeah. Like I used to live in Vancouver, and one time I was walking down the street, and there's a lot of homeless people in Vancouver because it's warmer there. And so a lot of people from across Canada will head over there because the winters are not as bad. They're still cold, they're still rainy and wet, but they're not as like negative a million degrees like here.
Oh, it's so beautiful in the winter. It's like little snow on the my mom and my brother went to a wedding that like my brother's friend is a wedding a couple years ago, and it was in the winter, but it was just like it was a soft snow falling, and it was
well, if you get that, usually it's just rain and gray, so it's not great. But so I was walking down the street, and I was walking by a Starbucks, and I had a hoodie on that said love. And I loved that hoodie. And a homeless guy came up to me, and he said, hey, I'm really hungry. Like, do you have money that I can have? And I'm not usually in the practice of giving money to people. But I was like, hey, there's a Starbucks right here. I'll take you in, and I'll buy you whatever you want.
A sandwich or something.
Yeah, so he got like a big hot chocolate, and he got couple things to eat. I was like, just whatever you want, like I didn't even give him a limit. And I did that, and I came outside, and this lady, like I kept walking. I was like, have a good day, bro. Like he was eating his stuff, and then a lady, like I heard someone running behind me, and this lady like stopped me, and she had like run me down to say like, I saw him doing drugs.
Okay.
You shouldn't buy him food. And I was like, so like he's not shooting hot chocolate up his veins. Like he still deserves to eat, like I was just so appalled that this lady would be offended that I just bought food.
He's not allowed to live anymore,
like
just
my
because he
fellow,
does drugs.
Yeah, like my fellow person, human being. And a lot of the stories that you hear in Vancouver are not just like, I'm just here because I want to do drugs, like their stories are stories of heartbreak, and like there's real reasons why they're on the street. And
addiction is a mental illness.
Addiction
like you can't just
nuts.
get rid of it.
And a lot of the people, and this is getting morbid and this is getting deep, but a lot of people in Vancouver, like in that there's one area called the downtown east side where there's like just rampant drug use and homelessness and prostitution. And if you talk to a lot of the people, like they will admit that they are there to die and that they would rather die than go through withdrawal, because withdrawal is so no joke. And so,
actually that guy who says like all religions are right, I think he became a Christian like after becoming sober.
Yeah.
But he was like a heavy drug addict for like 10 years. And he said it took him a week of withdrawals to feel like even a little bit better.
Yeah.
So he wasn't done withdrawals. It's just like a week he didn't like he barely remembered anything that happened that week.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's not
easy.
It's not easy, and it's really painful. So I mean, that's a little bit off topic, but that's just loving your neighbors. That's just, the poor people around, like if you can do something for them, do it for them. And not even just financially, but like, if you can tell that someone's having a bad day,
you can listen.
You can even just smile at them, hold the door for them. If you're going in the same, like, I mean, in COVID, it's weird because it's like, they can't see your face when you're smiling, but like, just,
you give them a thumbs up.
Just like do something practical to bless them. Like sometimes my neighbor puts his garbage out in front of his house, like outside his door. So like grab it and take it out for him. It's just like little things that bless people. That it doesn't have to be this like crazy. Like I'm buying everyone Starbucks every day.
Right
like I don't have the money to buy everyone Starbucks every single day, but like.
Maybe sometimes we'll just like, give it to someone.
Yeah, and I had a friend who was homeless for a while, and he said, the biggest thing for me was just people acknowledging my humanity. Like people, like when you see a homeless person, think about it for a second. When you're walking down the street and you're tracking a homeless person sitting there, do you like try to like, oh, I'm looking at my phone, I'm pretending I'm on a phone call. You're turning the opposite way, so you're talking to your friend who you're walking with, so you don't have to look at them when you walk by. And just imagine that. Times you see 1,000 people in a day or something and everyone's treating you like that, like what that does to you. And so even just like loving them in that way and just saying like hello and smiling to them, and even if they ask you for money and you don't want to give them money, just say sorry, I can't today, but you like actually acknowledge their humanity. Like that's just really powerful.
This isn't really like what you're saying, but about on the topic of like don't do drugs, kids, but like I know I'm preaching to the choir here because none of my friends do drugs, but it's just that
no, I'm just kidding.
I reveal that I've been like a drug addict since like 10 years old. Oh my gosh, what a twist though. Wow. Not a thing to joke about obviously, but it's just like it would
anyway, go on.
Anyway, child, so basically, I saw this thing where it was a person describing how, a lot of the time they're like, oh, well, I take shrooms for spiritual reasons or whatever, which I guess it's your brain is in the state of euphoria. So technically you do see more, quote unquote, more because you're like putting your brain in overdrive basically. But, and also they said that you're not, you can't get addicted to shrooms, but it's like, I feel like anything you can get addicted to. Like
I'm not a doctor, so I couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I just feel like claiming that you can't get addicted seems like something that an addict would say. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know about them, but anyway, I saw another experience of a person because I feel like in drugs, like especially the hallucinogenics, there's a lot of for the people who like it or use it. It's like two different worlds. There's like some people were like, oh, I had the best time, and then some people were like, I felt like I was dying. So it was like, okay, how do you reconcile the two ideas that like, well, obviously I think that it's wrong to take drugs either way, but like how can you either have like the best experience ever or feel like you're dying? Like I don't understand how that works.
I mean, I don't know either. I think different bodies react to things in different ways. It's just chemicals. Like some people are lactose intolerant and some people aren't. So you don't know how your body's going to react to something in chemicals. I would just say, having been around people, like I did a lot of work in that area of Vancouver and hung out with people a lot that were like really severely addicted to drugs. And I would just say like, it seems like it's fun at the beginning. Like, oh, it's no problem, whatever, like
I can stop whatever I want.
but like if you ever go to Vancouver and you just walk down those streets, It's just like a 3-block area. It is heartbreaking what you see, you know, and you know, even people are like, well, but marijuana doesn't do anything to your brain and blah, blah, blah. And like, I know a dude.
We did a project on that, actually.
I knew a dude who had smoked pot for 30 years. And every time I saw him for an entire summer, like every week, he told me the same 3 stories, you know, about his cat who jumped out the window and like he didn't die. He just like broke his leg and they had to amputate it. And like, he called him lucky because he lived. Like, I heard that story every day, every week. Every time I saw that guy, you know, like,
oh, he didn't remember.
He didn't remember that he told me. He just had these stories, and you know, and he would write these poems and read them to us, and we were like, "What's happening?" You know, like it was just gibberish. And I was like, I don't know that I would believe anyone who said that it doesn't affect me in long term. You know, so
we don't really know enough.
Yeah, but I've seen someone who's long term used it and is messed up. So you know, like it's just not a smart thing, even if whether it's legal or not, you know, like, oh, the government says I can do it. Well,
just because it's legal doesn't mean you should do. Oh, yeah. Oh, that was another verse. I love that verse. I think it was in Corinthians. It was like, all is permissible, but not all is beneficial or something.
Yeah, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial.
So cool. Paul's so cool, guy.
Yeah.
if you're watching this, Paul.
If you're listening. Shout out to the Apostle Paul.
I really, you know, I used to think as a kid, like in heaven, you could kind of look at the globe and you'd like be able to just zoom in. I thought that's what like heaven was like when you wanted to check in with people, and you could just like
turn
watch
on the telescope.
Like, you're like, oh, look what they're doing. And I mean, it might happen still, but I don't know if that's necessarily a real picture of what heaven looks like. Because anyway. Oh, so yeah, the person who had gotten a bad trip on a drug that their friends kind of pressured them to do, this guy was like, oh, well, what I saw was not what my friends saw. My friends were like living in La La Land or whatever. They're just like candy people were talking to them or whatever, what's happening. And he said that he felt trapped for like so much longer than he was. I think he said it was like a couple of hours, his trip, but he felt like he was there for years. And he felt like there was this, well, he said what he saw was a giant like insect demon thing that had like a bunch of, you know, because insects have big eyes, right? They have a bunch of eyes, but imagine like a big one, right? A huge one, so you can see clearly their eyes. And he was terrified, and he felt like it was years of this, well, he described it as a demon, like telling him, worship me, and he felt like he couldn't hear anything else. It was like all he heard, and I was like, whoa. And people think that it's fun. Like, the possibility of it all is just like, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, thoughts?
I mean, yeah, it's wacky. I've never done drugs. I don't plan on it. And that's all I have to say. Don't do drugs, kids.
Eat your drugs. Don't do vegetables.
No, do vegetables. Don't do drugs.
And oh man, I forgot I have no idea what that means. Okay. Anyway, I wrote a thing that I don't know what it means. But
been there.
Back to the Catholic Church, because I feel like we kind of cycled. So part of the whole like the changing of humans, or what was it? I forgot. Anyway, it was like against designer babies or whatever you want to call it.
Okay. Yeah. The genetic modification.
I was like, But then a lot of our food, without even necessarily wanting it to, is like GMOs, because they're like, oh, well, it's more efficient to like put these genes on this strawberry because it's like it won't die or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what I mean by how weird. I feel like the way that they presented it was very sudden, and they didn't really quite explain it. And like, there's so many things that you should bring up when, like, yeah, some of my food is GMO'd, but it's not necessarily our fault. It's just that it was quote unquote easier or faster to make, since we have to feed so many people in the world, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that somebody should say, oh, well, I'm sinning because I'm eating something wrong. Like,
well, is that what they're saying? Like,
not necessarily.
Are you saying you don't know what they're saying?
Yeah, I don't know what they're saying.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
it's unclear.
I kind of took it to mean like human genetic modification. Because, yeah, absolutely, our food is genetically modified a lot of the time now. And, I mean, I was reading a book last week that was talking about how it's actually harming the environment more the way that we're genetically modifying our food than if we did, like, the organic way that God intended kind of thing, like I'm not saying that
but it doesn't make money, so
yeah, and it's just more work, and yeah, it doesn't bring in as much money.
It's not
But
as
when you're injecting, I come from a farming family, and so when you're injecting
farmers.
Yeah, I'm a farmer. I love me my cows. When you're injecting a bunch of antibiotics and whatever into a cow to make it produce more milk, like that's not good for the cow. And then what we
it probably
drink,
feels uncomfortable.
And
too.
we don't do that in Canada. That's more in the States. But it's just not like it's not as good. It's not healthy, and like my uncle still has a little hobby farm. He has a few cows and.
Cute.
Yeah, it's fun. I like going there. But my nephew is lactose intolerant, and when he can't drink milk, but then when he goes to my uncle's farm and drinks milk straight from the cow,
fine.
He can drink it. He can't drink tons of it, but he can tolerate drinking it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Interesting. So, and food can actually heal us, but the way that we're producing it is not.
Well, that's why there's so much debate about what you should be eating, what you shouldn't be eating, and it's all the time. There's so many different things out there that people are like, oh, you have to do this. This changed my life, and it's the other person no, you have to do the complete opposite. And it's there's I guess the extremes would be raw vegan to raw carnivore, and everyone falls somewhere.
Raw carnivore. Oof.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's. I'm pretty sure that if you eat raw beef, it's not as bad as chicken, which is salmonella and stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, the extremes would be raw vegan versus raw carnivore, and everyone should probably fall in somewhere more in the middle between those two. But people are on either side, and I think that the way that people are yelling at each other nowadays, that they can't really talk. Basically, you have to be the loudest so that people will believe you the most, which is basically the conclusion I've come to. It's some people will be like, oh, you have to go keto, and then the other person is like, no, you have to do all the carbs, and it's it's calm down. And that's because for a while I was very much so obsessed with am I being healthy enough, or am I eating the right things, but which in conclusion, if you want my conclusion, no, I'm not eating healthy, because there's because I feel like there's so much dedication or commitment around quote unquote being healthy or whatever. Because that can be whatever you want. It's not very definitive. Depends on the person. And so it's in this world where everything is, it can be very, how do I call it? There's so many different things that you have to think of when you're doing something. And it's just moderation is key. That's the main thing. How do we know that we're doing these things? Back to the list of the new societal sins, how do we know that we are polluting the environment just by existing?
Yeah.
So are we? Yes, we are sinning in our everyday lives, but the way that they're saying it is you are, even if you're trying to be eco-friendly, you are still sinning. It's
yeah.
I feel again, it's kind of harsh,
Again, we don't know that that's what they're saying, right? Because everyone has a carbon footprint, and I don't know that the Vatican has gone completely
green
carbon neutral or whatever. So I think that we've done a lot of harm, and I think that even the little bits that we can do, where we are reusing as much as possible, we're not just chucking out whatever, recycling if we need to, the whole, I don't know if you guys got taught this, but when I was in elementary school, it was reuse, reduce, recycle.
The three big R's.
The 3 R's. And it was reuse what you can, and then reduce your consumption, and then recycle what you can. And that's not the be all and end all of what we can do. But I just think looking at what you want out of life. I read this book about this guy who he was a medical doctor, and they lived in this massive house, and he decided that he was looking at the impact of the environment on health in people. And so he decided that he wanted to live a more eco-friendly life. So he and his family moved into a house that was the size of the garage of the house that they originally had. but it was a big garage. So like,
Okay.
it wasn't just like we're living in a shack, but you
We're
know, like
living in a
they
tiny
just
room.
downsized their house from
Mhm.
this massive thing that they didn't really need to something that was more practical for them. And they started to compost and recycle and, you know, really be aware of what they were consuming and how they were using energy. And he's like, you know, every 3 weeks we would throw out one grocery bag full of garbage. That was it.
Zero waste.
Yeah. So they were doing a lot of good for the environment. And his whole point of the book was like, hey, like I love God and I'm called to serve God and I want to save the environment as much as I can. And so this family was doing what they can. He actually quit being a medical doctor and became an arborist.
What's an arborist?
Someone who works with trees.
Oh, arborist. Interesting.
Yeah. So, which is kind of a fascinating story too. But, you know, just to think about what you're doing, you know, like, do you have to use the dryer every time you do laundry? You know, like or can you hang your clothes up? You know, like I do half and half. I'm not going to lie. But, you know, are you like taking the longest, hottest showers ever until there's no hot water left in your house? Or, you know, like there's just things that you can do that are more energy efficient. Turn off the lights when you're done, you know, like simple things that add up. And yeah, I mean, the more people that do that, the more we can serve. And so I think it's more of like, I think I would say it is a sin if you're like, I'm eating a candy bar and the wrapper is, you know, you just toss it and it's just on the side of the road.
Well, I guess it's more, this was also in the video where we were like, it was analyzing the Christian religion or whatever. And they said, a lot of it is about your intention. And I was like, I didn't ever like realize it consciously that yes, we are thinking about what the person's intention was, right? It's not necessarily the outcome. It was more, were they trying to do harm? Because sometimes when you're like, you decide or something doesn't work out or something happens before you actually do something bad, right? But then it's still wrong because you wanted to do it. Like you were trying to.
Yeah.
And so I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, intention is a big deal because, you know, you can say something intending to mean it one way and someone can take it a completely different way. And like, it doesn't matter if you intended that. It's what they interpreted, you know? So, people write their own stories about stuff, but yeah, I think like if you are with regards to like polluting the environment, like I think if you're, you know, just carelessly living your life and leaving your car running all the time, and I get that you have to do it a bit in the winter, you know, but like I don't live in an extreme environmental sense, like but I feel like my apartment building doesn't even compost, so yeah. I don't know that I don't know what's happening like across the country that I could be like, Montreal's great, but yeah, you just do what you can. And
I remember when we visited Texas, they're like, oh, you guys have like people picking up your recycling? Because apparently they didn't have community recycling.
Yeah, they had to drop it off or whatever.
Yeah, they had to go to a specific place. And so people are too lazy to like go all the way. It's like,
well, and then like, I mean, I lived in Japan and you had to wash all your garbage and sort it according to different categories. And, you know, so it's like, that's like next level.
They're very dedicated.
Yeah.
Singapore too, I feel like. It's like
probably
so clean.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, guys, I lived in Singapore for a while, even though I wasn't like, I was a baby still. So I
used to want to go to Singapore, and then people who were from there was like, it's too hot for you. So I don't know if I want to go there anymore.
Yeah. Very tough. You should
but I lived in Asia, so it's close enough, right?
That's why, like, I remember, the last time we went to China was in the winter, so I was like, it's not hot, so. Because it gets really hot also due to pollution, I guess.
Yeah.
Because we live in the big city. Most of my family lives in cities, so it's like, especially Beijing, since there's just so much concrete everywhere, you're just,
Yeah, you're like, you're in an oven.
Yeah.
That's bacon.
It's so hot. Like, I can't believe people even wear clothing most of the time. Like, I mean, obviously, you have to be socially acceptable. Yeah. Like, not wearing clothing is not right. But it's just, like, it's so hot. Like,
yeah, no, I remember. Even in Japan, we used to judge how hot the day was by how many showers you took that day. Like, today was a 3-shower day.
Did you take cold showers on hot days?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Or
you're just so sweaty and you're just sweaty and gross. So it's just like, swimming's not really a thing in Japan.
Really? Oh.
Not very many people knew how to swim.
Interesting. Oh, sorry. Back on topic.
Yeah.
I learned only recently. I feel so dumb for not knowing, but like, I guess there's just a bunch of stuff that it never crosses my mind because, I guess I just hear a thing and I'm like, oh, whatever. And a bunch of stuff just, I forget completely. So, oh yeah, so I learned recently that the Catholic Church believes in purgatory. And I was like, I, because I guess I never thought about it. I thought that it wasn't a thing. I mean, is it real? Like, do we believe in purgatory? I don't know.
No, Protestants don't believe in purgatory.
Yeah. Because I was like, no, I don't think so. Like, and then I started asking my parents, and they're like, no. But I was like, wait a second, hold on, because I always thought that purgatory was something that like non-Christians believe in. I didn't know that it was a Catholic thing, and I was like, hold on. Oh, basically, purgatory is like a place for Christians, I think, to like pay off their debt before going to heaven? Question mark.
Yeah, I don't know that I understand it fully, but my understanding is that you can, if there's sin in your life when you die, you can go there and do your penance. So do the thing like the rosaries or do whatever you need to do to be right with God, and then you get into heaven. And it takes like a certain amount of time based on how bad you were or whatever. But in my beliefs in the Protestant tradition, Jesus' death covers all of our sin.
Yeah.
And so it is not a question
of... it ties into why they have like the confessional, right?
Yeah.
But that's always the thing I was like really unsure about, because like why would the priest or whoever you're talking to know better than you what you should do? Because it's like very is it legalistic? It's like why would this action that I'm doing repay or like count myself back up, like I'm going back up wherever I was.
Yeah.
Because I did this one thing, and so now if I do this thing, then I'll be like back into God's graces or whatever.
Yeah, there is something to be said for confession of faith, confession of sin. Even in the Protestant tradition, we don't ask people
like, what should I do?
Tell us specific
like,
sins and then absolve them of their sin for whatever, like after they do whatever. We believe Jesus forgives you 100%
when you repent.
But confession is very powerful in the sense that, like, if you look at any of the historical revivals, so like, for example, in Korea, the church is like booming there right now. There's like 100,000 churches just in that little country.
Wild.
And like millions of Christians. And what started that was people were at a prayer meeting and they were praying, and someone confessed like having slandered another person, like talked behind their back or gossiped about them or whatever, or like feelings of hate that they felt towards this person. And then that person confessed something else, and then people just started confessing their sin. And what happened was it released all of these things, because like sin can exist in your life and damage what is happening in your life, right? Like it can hold you back from being fully alive in Jesus. And so these people were just like confessing this stuff and getting it out in the open. And it wasn't as in the sense of like, I need to be forgiven so that I can be, feel right with God. But it was like, I'm getting this out in the open because I don't want anything to stand in the way of what God might do here. And what happened was this crazy explosion of faith from that small prayer meeting, from the act of people just saying, I'm just going to lay it out there, what I struggle with. And there wasn't condemnation for those people. They received forgiveness and grace from their fellow Christians and from God. And then, that's what started this crazy movement of like thousands and thousands and thousands of people, churches, and millions of people knowing Jesus and following Jesus.
Oh, I mean, this isn't really on topic, but I just thought of a very funny video. You know, like the audio on TikTok where it's like, well, it's on Reels, but it's on TikTok. And it's like, dun, 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 and then it's just, oh my God. And that's the end of the thing. And it's usually like people will put text on top and they're like, oh my God. And I mean, you can say that like saying, oh my God is wrong, but it's just so funny because there's this one thing, and it was like thinking about, it was like me telling someone I'm Korean. And then them saying, well, I'm not Korean. This person was. And they're them saying North or South. And I was like, oh my God. Because like, how dumb can you be to say North or South Korean? Like, I mean, I think if the person was North Korean, they would tell you. Like, because it's so uncommon for you to escape. So it's like, why? It's just the level of uneducation.
Yeah.
Like north or south. I find that so funny. Oh man. I think in Chinese too, like there's a specific name for North Korea because it's like not the same. There's a name. It's not North or South Korea. They name it like, say it's like Korea and the other name.
Korea and the other Korea.
Like it's another name for it.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it. Oh, I think. Oh right, and oh man. I think that's it. Very fun.
Yeah,
very cool.
Good times.
I had so much fun doing this.
That was a lot of talking.
Yeah, big talks, big word.
So this is like 3 episodes that we just did. So
yeah.
I'm in a race with my friend about who's done the most podcasts. So I'm
You're
winning now. I'm winning.
Oh, okay. Yeah.